Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming and the next recap of Dark Ages Vampire Chronicle, in which our coterie are currently in Charter. Now, just to retcon something that occurred in the previous session, I went by my notes rather than my memory because I thought my notes were correct, and obviously that was incorrect. I pointed out that Ulrich had fulfilled the sin of wrath and had lost 2 points on his Road of Kings as a result of doing so. That was incorrect. He attempted to fulfill the sin of wrath by striking back against the executioner responsible for the death of his herd, but failed. Upon being detected by guards at the Charter prison, he and Coraline fled across the town, and when confronted by two guards, Ulrich dominated one, approached the other, and was able to jam a knife into the neck of one as he fed through the neck of the other, thus killing two of them, and then feeding from both of them as well, swelling like a tick and becoming absolutely blood crazed in so doing. So we attributed that to greed. He didn't need to feed as much as he did. He didn't need to feed at all, and in fact he went on to do so. Now, this next session I would actually class as probably the best session of Vampire that I have ever had the pleasure to run. I posted that on my Gentleman Gamer Facebook page as well, because frankly everything went right. So rather than it being a game in which the coterie did something as a unit, it was a session in which each player had a pivotal scene. And it was very much a story of three distinct chapters. The characters very rarely interacted with one another and largely focused on their own agonies and explorations. So I'm going to address each of them in turn and detail what happened next. So starting with Ulrich. Ulrich actually found himself woke the following night having been covered in sewage and muck and silt, and crawling up the side of the riverbank after the sun had gone down. The reason? Because when he frenzied, he dove into the river and buried himself into the riverbed and had slowly crawled his way along until exiting through the sluice gate and into the fields outside of Charter. Now, when the night came, he was thoroughly despondent. He was absolutely filled with shame. He realised that he had lost many of the tenets, the valour, the honour, the glory, nobility, being able to uphold respect of what made the Road of Kings important to him through his actions in previous nights where he had lost control so readily. He didn't feel like he was worthy of the Via Regalis, and so as he clawed his way up the riverbank, covered in all the muck that was flowing down the river, and abjectly washing off his clothing, sitting there nude, his waxy, pale form, he didn't fall to tears, he fell to a great fugue, a great depression. He just sat there on the riverbank, content's probably the wrong word, resolved that if needs be he would sit there until the sun came up. He felt like a failure. I have to give credit to the player, Jenna, who was superb in her portrayal of this. She did not resist the fact that her character was feeling depressed. She did not play it up comedically. She did not do anything that was out of seeming to someone who had succumbed to a great pressure from outside and inside. And so Ulrich, for hours, just sat there on the riverbank wearing damp, barely cleaned clothes, streaked with shit, his bare feet in the river because his boots were ruined, just sitting there feeling like the most pathetic vampire around. It was around this time that Coraline actually spotted Ulrich several hours later. We'll get on to Coraline's story very soon. And having done so, went back to Charter and notified Sven, Ulrich's ghoul, his manservant and bodyguard, of where he was. And Sven, collecting some fresh clothes from a noble's house, including hat and boots, left Charter and visited his master, Ulrich. And seeing Ulrich in quite a dejected state, he offered to dress him in his usual cold and aloof and calculating, nigh sociopathic manner, seeming uncaring, cold glare, and Ulrich dejectedly agreed and put his arms out to be dressed in a bit of finery, but certainly wasn't caught up in the moment. Then Sven did something unexpected. He reached out and he put his hand on Ulrich's arm and he said, "My lord, you will be fine. You will find yourself again, I promise, and I will support you." This revitalised some of Ulrich's spirit. He'd always been close to Sven. Sven's been his ghoul for the longest time of any of his herd, all of the rest of which are dead. And he looked up into the eyes of Sven, and Sven looked back, at which point Sven did something even more unexpected for this coldly aloof killer. He took a step forward and planted his lips on Ulrich's, and he kissed him. And much to Ulrich's surprise, Ulrich kissed back. And the two of them began to undress each other on the riverbank at night, outside of Chartres, this holy town, this place of pilgrimage. And they culminated in having sex with each other. Now, at first, we were smiling. It was a little uncomfortable, the players doing this, myself and Jenna. And so we even rolled to brawl to see which of the partners would end up on top, I suppose. And Sven won without much difficulty there. But Jenna realised, yes, this makes sense. Ulrich is a meek, he's a servant, he is one who needs to be dominated and controlled. And this came out through the affection that was delivered upon him by Sven. Sven, who has always been very cold and dispassionate, but has a lot of love and loyalty for his master. And it went back to a reference we'd made before about Ulrich's relationship with his servants being perhaps like with Spartan warriors, that they shared each other's bodies. And Ulrich felt something at that point. During the act of lovemaking with Sven, he realised how close he was to his ghoul. And I actually gave the player the option. This act is so profound for Ulrich, and it is a final acceptance. It's like a piece of a puzzle finally put in place, because Ulrich has always felt like he doesn't belong. In fact, he's probably never been intimate with anyone in his entire mortal life, let alone immortal one, and he's certainly awkward around females. And this acts... Well, I gave Jenna the option. Ulrich could recover a point on the Road of Kings, recover 2 points on the Road of Kings. She could fulfill sloth through succumbing to depression and lust through having sex with Sven, or just sloth and a point on the Road of Kings, essentially reinvigorating herself, Ulrich feeling more... stronger than he did before. And Jenna went for recovering 1 point on the Road of Kings and fulfill the sin of sloth, saw this more as an act of love than of lust. And so that was their scene. This played out throughout the entire session, of course. All of the build-up and whatnot. But I absolutely have to hand it to Jenna and, to the other players as well, myself, that we dealt with this sex scene in an incredibly mature way. And that wasn't all, because Coraline, meanwhile... she was searching for Ulrich in Chartres when she first awoke, and she realised that she was being followed. She encountered a Venetian with his lady, who warned her about the murders on the streets, which were Ulrich's responsibility from the nights before. And she actually went to the site of one of these murders, where she realised that she wasn't just being followed, but her pursuer was hiding around the corner. So she pursued at speed and found a very dishevelled, bedraggled-looking man holding up a makeshift cross and saying, "Back, demon!" He was on his knees, there was no one else around, they were outside of the ducal gardens, and she fell down to her knees, not recognising him, failing rolls to do so, and asked who he was, and said, I am not a demon. The cross had no power over her, this man holding it had no faith, no true faith. And he explained that he was a member of her herd, and so he had witnessed and in fact perpetrated her being dragged beneath the waves on the way from England to France, that he realised that she was a demon, he was in the service to this creature, and what's more, since accompanying her, his wife, Gwyneth, had fallen ill with scrofula and was withering away, her neck horribly inflating, pustulating, and abscesses forming across her skin. And this was all because of this trip to the Kingdom of France and the harsh weather on the sea and everything else. And he said, while holding this cross aloft, he said, "You will heal my wife the way I have seen the deviant Ulrich do to Sven, the Dane, or I will go to the church about your true nature," clearly not recognising the danger in doing so. Coraline proposed a counter-offer. She said, "You have no power over me. You are nothing to me, but you can keep my company. You can remain within my herd, and your wife can do likewise if I heal her. Or to put it another way, if I heal her, you too become attached to me. If you do not agree to that, I will not heal her, and she will die." And it took a lot of persuasion. It took a bit of domination as well. But he agreed to it, and Edward took her to an inn outside of Chartres where his wife was laying on a pallet with the scrofula in some advanced stage. Unfortunately for the other residents within the inn, they weren't aware of how highly contagious TB is. And Coraline fed Gwyneth some blood from a bowl, and almost miraculously the swelling began to go down, colour began to return to her face, less blue, less purple, and more pink. And Edward, absolutely ashamed of what he had done, a religious man himself, aware that he was making a deal with the devil, he, on Coraline's orders, pulled Gwyneth from the bed and carried her back to Chartres, where they were to re-enter Coraline's service. Coraline spotted Ulrich around this time. Now, they returned to the church that they had been hiding out in, and Gwyneth had recovered enough lucidity by this point that she asked who her benefactor was, and attributed the healing powers of Coraline to the powers of God, and Edward vouched for that as well. Yes, of course, Coraline must be blessed, must be a saint, or in the making. But Coraline was quick to dismiss this. A fervently anti-theistic character, due to her harsh mistreatment in the convent, she fervently believes that there is no God, that there cannot be a God. And so she impressed this upon both Edward and Gwyneth. Gwyneth especially. The only God that you need to be concerned with is not the Christian one. You serve me now. There is no God in your life now. Gwyneth, well, she not only was influenced by the blood bond and received another feeding of blood by this point to completely heal the swelling, although whether that means the scrofula is gone forever is yet to be seen, accepted Coraline as her saviour, as she had readily saved her, and Edward, wanting to protect his wife, did likewise. Now, again, I have to take my hat off to the player, Vic, who I don't think she would mind my saying if she watches this video, that in other games Vic is a more patient, quieter, more concentrating player than an outwardly spoken aggressive one. And doesn't always drive the plot, I'll be honest. That's fine, because each player plays a role in the group. But in this game, and with Coraline, what I'm really beginning to see is her character start to take form, especially with the anti-religion idea. The idea that to accept me and accept my blessings, you're going to have to dismiss this idea of the Abrahamic faith. You will serve only me. And she's still on the road of humanity. And this didn't help recover her humanity, I will say. But what it did do was really plant in my mind what Coraline is about now, and Vic has done such a fantastic job of getting that across. She's really coming into her own as a role player. And all three of these role players who are now in the group as active participants, usually they are supporting or back of party, not necessarily of their own volition, but what I'm really finding with this game is completely the opposite, because they've got the chance to speak up and they've got the chance to play these characters, and they're playing their characters so well. And meanwhile we have Cheyenne. Cheyenne, who had decided that she would go and visit, well, she started the session actually with a Salubri who had just healed her face and gave her the option: you can travel with us or you can go to the British Isles where it is safe. If you stay with us, I can guarantee your safety. Now this was a fairly strange thing for her to offer, being on the road of sin, but no doubt she intended on using the Salubri, Nathalie, in her own way. But Nathalie did say that it was too dangerous to remain within the Kingdom of France in the courts of love. There were too many Tremere abound, and so she would go to the British Isles. And Cheyenne, using her pseudonym of Magdalene, said, when you reach Sarum, where Bethany is, the Salubri from the previous chronicle, say that Cheyenne sent you and that his is fine. And Nathalie agreed to it and asked to stay within Philippe le Bleu's haven during the remainder of, well, during the day, and she would depart on the following night. So Cheyenne asked Philippe whether this was okay. Philippe was quite dejected by this, the blind old warrior, who reminds me a lot of Jorah Mormont in his poise, in his pose, in the way he speaks. And he was reluctant, referring to the Salubri as a cyclops, referring to the Salubri as a soul eater. But as it is what his betrothed asked, it is what his betrothed shall get. However, he did say, because of this, because we have a guest under our roof, we cannot finish our marriage ceremony, we cannot share blood, we cannot share bed until she is gone. And Cheyenne said that is fine, we will do it tomorrow night instead. And so, when Cheyenne awoke, the first place she went to was the Hall of Fools, now with her new, beautiful face. And she encountered Ozan, our Setite there, or follower of Typhon as she styles herself, and asked Ozan, where does one go to feed in this town? Because I understand one cannot feed from the priesthood, as they are protected by Azuda de Blay. And Ozan said, well, recognising her through the voice, through the mannerisms, if not the face, but realising this was Magdalene now cured, although Magdalene didn't, or Cheyenne didn't explain how. She said, I have some... wherever there is a religious pilgrimage site, you can find brothels, Magdalene. There will always be places that the priesthood go to dip their wicks. And I know of some fantastic ones in Charter. They will never be torn down because the priesthood needs them. It's what keeps the men sober. So I will take you to one of my favourite ones, and you can feed alongside me. And Cheyenne was quite pleased by this. This allowed her to experiment and experience her new beauty once again. Raoul, her sire, posing as her grandsire at this time, arrived in the Hall of Fools as well, and seeing Cheyenne had a complete personality switch. He now loved her, he now respected her, he showered praise upon her, he was so glad to have her back, to how she previously looked, and it really highlighted how shallow Raoul is, or at least wants to appear to be. He was positively hugging her and kissing her and saying, I'm glad that you have returned to your beautiful state, my beloved grandchild, Magdalene. And he said that he would wait there for her for the rest of the night, but alas, she never returned to the Hall of Fools. So they went to the brothel, which was in the southwest corner of Charter, just over the sluice, the open sewer that runs out of the town, so it's not a particularly fine establishment to a smell. But upon entering it with Ozan, she was told by Ozan, you can have whatever you want in here. This isn't a bawdy, seedy place. There is not one communal area where orgies go on. Each servant has a room. You can have male, female, or other. You can come within. You can enjoy yourself. You can do whatever you choose. I have already paid it all up front for a year. And if you are still not full after you've experienced one, go to another room, experience another. This was like a pick and mix, an all-you-can-eat buffet for Cheyenne. And so Cheyenne asked to be directed to a male's chamber, and she was. She was introduced to a real Gallic beauty of a man, well-muscled, probably a woodcutter, judging by the strength of his shoulders and arms. And his room was actually bedecked with some finery, church candles, silk sheets, all the way from the east. Clearly, this was a brothel that was well-moneyed, but it would be, given that it is probably where the bishop and priests of Chartres go. And if you need money and you're a prostitute, you ply your trade on the clergy. And she experienced lovemaking with this male prostitute and feeding from him, wanting to experience what it was like. Now, again, we were a little tentative, we were a little awkward in the role-playing of this, and we didn't go into sort of vulgarities, but we went into enough detail to assume that as he climaxed, she fed from him. And this, in turn, made her climax as well. For all intents and purposes, she orgasmed during the act of drinking and lovemaking at the same time. And this did something to Cheyenne. There's a combination of things going on in Cheyenne's life right now. While she's on the road of sin, last night her face was healed in an altruistic deed by a salubri. She was also betrothed to a vampire who seems like he would do anything for her heart. And now she has experienced the pleasures of the flesh, the true pleasures of the flesh, making her realise what it is to be human. Just like when the salubri healed her and she felt her heart pump and she drew a breath and all of a sudden her veins were back in motion, if just for a split second, it was the same at this point of climax. It was like she was warm and human again. And I gave Nikki, our player, the option. At this point, quite unconsciously, you can switch to the road of humanity. You'll have 4 points in it, but you will have quite unconsciously abandoned the road of sin. You've accepted the strength of your humanity, or you have realised how well you can manipulate humanity, how well you can control it, how well you dominate it, and gain a point of conviction instead. It took Nikki quite a while to decide which one she wanted to do, because this was a real decisive moment for her character, but she ultimately decided on staying on the road of sin and putting a point into conviction. She is well and truly prepared that her character is one that dominates mortals rather than succumbs to their whims. And so she fed on another one before departing. Now, finally, she went to Philippe Lebleu's haven for the bleeding and bedding ceremony. And when he asked her, "Will you sleep with me during this day?" and she said yes, he fell to his knees and he was raptured. He was, if he had eyes to blink, he would have been blinking back the tears. He was thanking God for sending this supplicant, this beautiful female who loved him as much as he loved her, who accepted him despite his faults, who would share in him his agony. And this started to set Cheyenne's mind a thinking. He then showed her where he sleeps, a sort of laid out tomb, essentially in a closed off area just outside his house, but with an open roof. So it's a stone tomb, sort of stone coffin with a lid that he pushed back and said, "We will sleep in here during the day." Cheyenne succeeded in alertness and noticing there was a sort of stone, a separate fixture for the head area, and said, "What is that for?" And he explained quite matter-of-factly, "During the day at dawn I move that across so that I may be scorched by the loving sun's rays, so that my eyes may not see the cruelty of our existence, so that I may be blinded from the devil's gaze, so that I may not be subject to domination," and so on and so on. And he did this fanatically, he did this with passion and fervour, and of course this absolutely appalled Cheyenne, because she doesn't particularly want to blind herself, and she will be if she stays in that coffin with him, and said so. And he said, no, this is a part of our arrangement. This is part of our marriage, that even though your face has been healed, your eyes shall be scoured from your head, if you are to be on the road of heaven as I am, and to believe in God, and know that God loves you, praise Helios, etc. And she declined adamantly, and persuaded him successfully. No, at least not tonight. She got one success. Not during this following day. We will not sleep together because we have more to discuss, and this has come as something of a surprise. And Philippe this was after they had made love as well. And she had even persuaded him to do some, I suppose, kinky stuff, which broke him out of his Christian mould. Was thoroughly disappointed. He wasn't even angry or pissed off, he was just disappointed that he feels like he's been misled. He feels like she should do this. She is my wife now. If this is what I ask of her, why is she rejecting it? He's a very traditional vampire, very traditional man of the age, and the fact that she wishes to express herself and decline the light of God, the loving light of God, he agreed for one day only, but this would be revisited on the following night. So, that is where we got to, and again, all praise to Nikki, to Vic, and to Jenna. My 3 players, they're all fantastic ladies who are brilliant role players, and they're really coming into their own in this game. Their characters are achieving so much in the way of introspection and on pressing things externally in the plot. There wasn't a game that moved on much geographically, but in terms of character building, this session really did a great number, and I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I know the players did as well. We dealt with some very heavy subject matter, some very mature subject matter, specifically revolving sex, and also the rights of women, I suppose, in the Middle Ages, and the fact that men expect to be able to order them to do whatever they like. There was quite a lot that was in play here, relationship dynamics as well, and family dynamics, and all of it came out, and it all seemed to work perfectly, and I very rarely come away from a session feeling so happy about it, but this one I couldn't find any fault with it at all, and that's not just on me, that is on the strength of the players. So thank you very much, you 3, for playing. And Sylvanius, by the way, did pop up at one point to diagnose the scrofula. Cappadocian, the player, did speak up to diagnose the scrofula, say what the danger was, and so on. So not to give him his due, he is still around, but he isn't a terribly active participant at this point. He's got other things on. So thank you very much for watching, and look forward to giving you the next recap.